So we've said that out of home is a local medium, and you buy showing sizes, GRP levels. It's actually weekly GRPs, folks. I made a mistake. It's not monthly. I now want to show you what you would go through if you wanted to buy out-of-home program in Cincinnati, Ohio. We're going to go to the website of an independently owned, one of the last independently owned out-of-home companies, because there's been a lot of consolidation in out-of-home with a couple of big companies buying up all the little independent companies. So this is choose a display type. So they've got digital boards. They have bulletins. Bulletins are the big signs on the highways that a lot of cars go by. They're more expensive. Posters are smaller. They're typically printed on paper, and they sprinkle around. You buy lots of them and kind of blanket a market and get a fast reach build that way. Let's take a look at poster inventory in Cincinnati. So you do a lot with maps when you're buying out of home. Explore Norton's inventory. So 5 miles of Cincinnati. So let's see what we find here. Well, and there we go. Hopefully this will disappear now. Yes? No? Okay. So I don't know if we can move the map around. Yeah, we can. So this shows, obviously, all those blue things are poster panels. They're 12 by 24 feet, and they're sprinkled all over. You see Cincinnati. Don't know how many of you know Cincinnati, but there's the river right here. Cincinnati in Ohio is on the north up here, and to the south is Kentucky. Covington, Kentucky is just south of Cincinnati. This is how, by the way, the big airport typically serving Cincinnati is in Kentucky. Okay. So if I were buying posters in Cincinnati, I would have to commit usually to a certain number of them, 20, 40, 60. Depending on what I wanted to cover, do I want to be near the zoo, or here's the downtown area here. Do I want to be in the downtown area and reach people when they're coming into work? You can see a lot of these are on these smaller roads, see, that I told you about. Let's look at bulletin inventory, the big ones on the highways, and see what we see there, okay? So hopefully this will pull up. There they are. The green ones are now the bulletins, and you won't see too many of them on the smaller roads. They're mostly going to be on the bigger highways, see? And typically with bulletins, I can also buy showing sizes, but they're a lot more expensive. They're usually 4 or 5 times as expensive as posters because they're bigger and they tend to have more cars going by them. They're at more, highly traveled locations. Now, one thing I would do if I were buying Cincinnati, I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see if we can pull up. Yeah, see? We can actually pull up a picture of the bulletin. We see its ID number. We see its cost, $2,000 to $3,000 for 4 weeks. View details. Let's see what details we get. Okay, there's our nice photo sheet. You see where it's located. This is the latitude and longitude, which is how all out-of-home is pretty much coded these days. And this one is what's called a left-hand read, which is typically not what you want, because when people are driving on the right side of the road, they're more likely to see things on the right side. But it also seems that it's pretty close to the road, and it seems to face the road pretty well, so it's a pretty visible sign. But what you have to do when you buy an out-of-home program, particularly if you're buying bulletins or more expensive units and fewer units, is you or someone else has to ride the market. You actually go, you'll be hosted by the out-of-home company, or you could do it on your own. and you drive by the boards, the bulletins, the posters that they want to sell you, and you decide if they're good or they're bad. And you can take a look at what traffic is like and where they really are, how visible they are to the road. And by the way, this bulletin will have another sign on the back of it, right? And that one is a right-hand read to the traffic going the other way. Okay. So out of home is a very hands-on, click that a couple of times, so I got it a couple of times. Very hands-on medium. Let's see what their digital network looks like. Oop. There we go. We can get this out of here. Okay, so this is where they have the orange are digital signs, and their digital signs are, they don't have a lot of them, but they're going to be a lot of them, the highest circulation signs. Okay. So digital signs on highways cannot run video. They can change the image every 5 or 6 seconds. So it's a static image that changes. But again, you can run all of it from one computer. They have wireless hookups, most of them, and I can change my copy, and it's very, very flexible. But they're typically 6 advertisers, different advertisers will run on the digital signs as opposed to only one on these non-digital signs, because the non-digital signs are paper or they're like a flexible vinyl material, and they're printed. They're put up there normally for a month and nothing changes. These are a whole different kettle of fish. 6 advertisers run on them. It can be changed immediately. And I'll tell you that to run on one of these is going to cost you almost as much as buying one of these other panels. Even though you're the only ad here and you're one of 6 here, it's still going to cost you almost as much. Why? Because eyeballs go to things that move and change. Just think about yourself. I mean, your eye is attracted to movement. Number 1. Number 2, these have very high circulation. Number 3, you have this flexibility. You can change your message so that if you're, a local TV news show, you can put up, different things that you're featuring, or, whatever the case may be. Or you're a grocery store, you put up the deal of the day, or whatever the case may be. But I just want you to get the sense that out of home is a very hands-on thing to buy, even to the point of going to the market and taking a look yourself. And here I am on YouTube, and I don't really want to be on YouTube. Okay, now we've made the point out of home is local. It's bought city by city. It's bought in showing sizes. There are a couple different basic kinds of out of home. Bulletins are kind of pinpoint things that tend to build awareness over time. Okay, you don't buy that many of them. They're expensive. Those are the big ones. This is the poster panel. The poster panel spreads over the market, reaches most of the city within a day or two, frankly. So if you're a product that needs to reach a lot of people quickly, like if, for instance, you're a movie that's coming out and you bought 1 month before the opening date of the movie, you want to reach everybody in the market, you really want to buy poster panels. Now, one of the big issues with out of home is because it's just one flat image, because you really can't put a lot of detail up there for the most part, particularly anything that reaches a vehicle. Somebody's driving by quickly and they're just not even going to look at something that's too complicated. Getting the creative right in out of home is a huge part of your effectiveness, almost more than any other medium. This is somebody who did not get the creative right. Okay. So this is just, it's way too complicated. Your eye doesn't know where to look. It's a typical client-directed piece of creative where the client wants to put everything but the kitchen sink up there, in case, this might work or that might work, or maybe, I got to put everything I'm doing up there, as opposed to something simple and focused. So a lot of what we're going to do as we think about out of home and about the creative impression of out of home is one way to combat the fact that it tends to be a fast exposure, not a great depth of sale exposure. But if you do the right creative, you can make up for that. to a large degree. So outdoor creative needs to be provocative, but simple and readable. Now, if you do a bulletin, one of the bigger ones, one of the other advantages of bulletins is you can extend beyond the frame. You can do cutouts. You can cut out within the frame. You can do three-dimensional things. And obviously, whenever you do anything that's a little different, that isn't the expected, that breaks out of the box, so to speak, you get more eyeballs. But it's important that your brand name be legible from a distance, that it be big. It's not a print ad. It's not a subtle little thing you're just doing a little tiny branding on. It's got to read. Typically want a simple visual and headline, and there obviously is not much depth of sale. The way I put the best out of home is it has provocative simplicity. Now, what do I mean by provocative simplicity? Okay, you're going to think I'm a little whatever here, but I don't know how many of you are familiar with haiku poetry, Japanese poetry. There are only a few syllables, but it's very symbolic and meaningful. It is provocative simplicity. Here are a few haiku poems. Only a few lines, but it makes you think, makes you visualize, and engages your brain. Now, this is provocative simplicity in an out-of-home ad. You look at it, and it's not just a can of soup saying Campbell's soup will warm you up on a cold day. This is Toronto, by the way. This is another poster panel, as you can see. It's paper glued up there. This is really good creative. Okay, the Campbell soup can is, everybody knows that. It's knit. It's been knit like a sweater, and it says better than a sweater. Now, doesn't that say it's going to warm you up? And don't you have to look at the headline and the visual and try to put them together and figure out what it's saying? So, out-of-home advertising is unavoidable, but it's a little bit like, let's say, an uninvited guest, okay? So, someone knocks on your door. It's my dog looking up at me. He's like, whoa, what was that? Nothing, Truman. Just me lecturing. You open the door, and there's an unexpected visitor. You don't know the visitor. You didn't invite the visitor. This is an uninvited visitor, okay, to my world. Well, the visitor had better do something to engage you, okay? Say something, give you a joke, and tell you who he or she is or why they're there or something. Out-of-home advertising needs to do something to engage your mind so that your eyes don't just slip past it without thinking about it. That's why this provocativeness is so important. Now, here's another one. This is a bigger out-of-home format, and it is called a bulletin. Okay, it's 20 by 60 feet, and that's an extension of the bottle above the sign, which right away draws your eyes. And then you have this headline. Now, this ran a while ago. I would suggest that this would not be a very popular sign to run right now because people don't really have a sense of humor about this topic. Why they ever did, I'm not sure. But suffice it to say that once again your mind is engaged, I think. Okay, here's an extreme example of 3D, but also provocative because you're like, what the heck is that? It's an apartment. It's a studio apartment with a bed and a kitchen and a living room, and there's the stove, and you know, in New York we live in, there's a bathtub. In New York we live in small spaces, many of us. I know I live in a fairly small space. So it's provocative. It's provocative because it's 3D, first of all. And it's also provocative because you have to think to put the visual together with the headline. It engages your mind. Now, getting off the topic of creative just a little bit.